To me, this is so exciting because we haven't had for Terminator, we haven't had anything this good in a while. What I love about this Terminator Zero is that they actually do. I think they actually fixed the problem with the Terminator franchise because I think
Yes,
after Dark
yes.
Fate, everybody thought that the Terminator franchise was terminated. It's like it's terminated.
Yeah. It's out of here, man. Like, you can't come back from you went in, you ruined your own franchise, and you replaced it with garbage. Like, it's the worst version of this. So
That was
anyway,
the
I didn't mean to cut you off.
collateral.
Keep going.
No, but that's the collateral damage of Dark Fate was that it really killed everything. They killed John Connors, killed Sarah Connor in a way, killed the T
800.
800 because it made him a soft little,
Oh, yeah.
cuddly bear.
Yeah,
You want to hug him now.
He's got like a girlfriend and he's settled down and shit.
Yeah,
So it's like, this is the dude that stalked a police station and killed 17 officers in
yeah,
pursuit. If anything, Dark Fate made me think about this. And I thought about this like this morning.
mhm,
I was like, the interesting unasked question there was, what does a Terminator do after he fulfills his mission?
yes.
That's a good question.
Well,
So what if he did what?
yeah, and that's something I really wanted to expand upon because I think one thing about the Terminator, Skynet is basically the Terminator with more intelligence. They got that it became Skynet because of the initial CPU from the first Terminator that was sent back to 1984. So it's
Well,
basically a
so
Terminator.
in
Mhm,
Terminator 1,
mhm.
Skynet actually is formed organically, like it just happens, right? And then, John
Well,
Connor rises, the resistance rises. So they send the Terminator back to kill Sarah Connor, the mom. And
yes,
then they send a lone warrior, the
yes,
resistance does, to
yes,
protect Sarah. And
yes.
that's just classic stuff.
Yeah, and so what it
Sarah
looked
kills the
like at the
Terminator.
yes, yes. And so what it looked like at the time
So,
was that it looked like it was a paradox. Like the past created the future, created the past, created the future. It was like a loop that just kept going on and on in time. But actually,
right.
it wasn't.
What I think I understand is she actually beat the Terminator, and what it suggests is that because she survived the assassination attempt, basically, John Connor will be born and he will
Yes,
lead the revolution.
yes,
However, Terminator 2 changes that. What they said
yes,
is that because they found the CPU in the smash, now there's like a new timeline that moves the date of now. We never heard of Judgment Day in Terminator 1.
yes,
Judgment Day is a new concept that was added in Terminator 2, and it
exactly.
describes the holocaustic event that
Yeah,
occurs in the new timeline
yes,
based on the CPU that Cyberdyne and Miles Dyson finds. And
yes,
so now the problem is the timeline has moved up because they had this big leap in technological advancement. And now the idea is to send back a T-1000 to ensure that this occurred. It was nice in Terminator 2 because they closed it off, right? I
yes,
cannot still terminate. He goes into the molten steel. He's done. The CPU is done. They throw it in there. It's
yes,
all done.
yeah.
I don't even remember Terminator 3. I just remember it. I remember laughing out loud in the theater because it ends with the nuclear missiles being launched.
Yes,
So
yes.
the final scene
They
is like the world's being destroyed. It's like, okay.
now
Dude, we've been trying to fight this off for 2 films, and here in part 3, they
it's
just let it happen.
inevitable. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
the message of part 3 was Judgment Day is inevitable. And so that way they could always be a Judgment Day. So there will always be a fight for humanity against the machines. And it's in a way I really did like 3 for a lot of things, but there were a lot of missteps in there,
yeah, yeah.
especially killing off Sarah in a dumb way was just really come on. We
Yeah, I didn't hate 3. Like, I
yeah,
hated Dark Fate. I was really
yeah.
upset with Dark Fate. But 3, I just thought was a bad Terminator film. It was just a
Mhm.
bad film. And to be honest, I can handle a bad film
Yeah.
any day. Bad films happen. Artists are going to create bad stuff. You're going to misfire. Like you said, you can shuffle yourself into a weird plot. You can just make a wrong turn.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
why we appreciate great filmmakers and great writers who somehow navigate that really narrow line and they get all the way to that finish line with a great story. Terminator 3 didn't do that, but there were many times that I felt like I was still watching a Terminator film. There's big
Yes.
chases. She's driving an ambulance.
Oh,
He's
I
in
loved
a
her.
tow truck or whatever it was. So,
Yeah.
there was echoes of it. It just seemed like a cheaper version of what T2 was.
Yes.
And like you said, then there was some kind of questionable choices. But then they didn't but the other problem is they didn't follow through with that movie.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Right.
you. Because I feel like, and I know they were like, okay, let's go really big and let's get Christian Bale and let's get recasting John Connor yet again was a huge mistake.
Yeah.
Because you took, yeah. And again, I think that the series Terminator Zero fixes that.
Yes.
It fixes that. And so it's just really cool that it's like, okay, well, I'm going to look at these other movies and see what good I can glean from them. And Kate, that I've been kind of shut off from because I've been like, wait a minute, this is not how it's supposed to go down. This is not the way it's supposed to happen.
I didn't even know about Terminator Zero. I didn't know it was coming. I didn't hear of any advertisement. I just noticed it on Netflix, and it had like a Terminator hand holding a little girl's hand, and it's a Terminator Zero on it. And I was like, well, what is that? I was like, oh my God, what are they doing? Like they're still making Terminator stuff. So to me, I thought it was like some super cheap nothing of a show. I didn't even judging it based on the one image I saw of it on Netflix. And then I saw some people talking about it, I think on YouTube, and they were saying positive things.
Yes.
And then what I did was I let it play for a second. I went back to it and I let it play because if you go to Netflix and just it'll play. And it was like this ultra Japanese anime style of art with like that like kind of realistic looking like Terminator, the way he was moving in all three dimensions. And I was like, oh man, why am I like captivated by this? So then I was like, all right, I might watch this. And then everyone else started talking about it. And then it got good press. And then you were talking about it. I was like, all right. And then you were like, Doug, we need to talk about Terminator Zero. I was like, all right, I'm in. Like, let's do Terminator Zero. I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch this thing, and I hope I love this thing. And I did love it. I have to say, there's something about going on the ride on this one that still made it worth it. And I feel like that's what being a part of the Terminator franchise was. How do you get away from this thing? How do you escape your fate? How do you fix things in a way that makes humanity work again? There's those. And so Sarah does that in the first one. Sarah does it in the second one. Like, that's compelling. So hopefully they stick the landing. But it's like, how can you survive the primal threat? It's a primal threat.
Yeah.
And it's a primal threat at a maximum level. This isn't like an animal that will give up or get tired. If it's, it's not like Jaws, who goes back out to sea and recovers and comes back. Like, this thing is like always on.
Yeah.
Always on mission. Always on target. Always coming after you. He will survive lethal attempts to destroy him. He will continue. He can survive fire and machine guns, and he will compromise public places. He doesn't care.
He doesn't.
The way
this one didn't care.
No, and I think that's why Terminator 1 works so well. Is because this machine just made choices that no human assassin would. When we think of human assassins, we think of like, sneaking in and disguising yourself and like being very stealthy.
Yes.
This guy's not worried about that.
Yeah, and I think that the attraction to the Terminator, the fact that they will do ridiculous things in front of everybody, the caring about like, oh, we don't want to get caught. Let them try to catch me. The police go after him. He's like, bam, bam. Like, he doesn't care. He doesn't. There's no there's no emotion back, behind any of the things that he's doing. But he also is like, not even like Jason or those other like scary guys.
Yeah, you know what?
They do things at night. They wait till you're alone in the house. They're not like at the
Yes.
party slashing everybody.
Right.
I just
So
probably
that's
gave
what I
him a
mean. Like,
good idea there.
totally, like, even psychotic people try to play by a certain logical premise, right? Of like not getting caught. There's a
Yeah.
certain attitude, there's a certain like mastermind, test game, there's stealth, there's disguise, there's, like you
Yes.
said, striking at night, there's camouflage, there's evading the police, there's evading the detectives, there's this like cat and mouse. The Terminator is like, I'll do that up to the point that the gunfire begins, and then I don't care. I will just smash through walls to come at you, and I will never
Yeah.
stop. It was
And
chilling the first time
yeah.
we witnessed this in 1984 with the Terminator. I think you heard my analysis of the home as battleground part of
Yes.
the hero of where one thing that happens in hero-centric stories, this what I call home as battleground, or the invasion of the inner
Yeah.
sanctum, which is in hero-centric stories. There's a lot of scenarios where the home, the inner sanctum is compromised
Yeah.
by the villain. And I think Terminator took that basic archetypal terror and just put it on steroids, and
Yeah.
then did it again, and then did it again, and then did it again. And before you know it, like us guys are even like, huh, dude,
Calm down.
police station, like, where do you go to hide
Yeah.
from this thing? There
Yeah.
is no hiding.
There you cannot hide from him. He will
Yeah.
eventually find you. Like the chase of it is always there is a chase going on, and that's also quite exciting about it because you have to try to escape this. It really just amps up like anything you're doing. If there's a hot like pursuit, it just makes it that much more exciting. Like, oh my God, try to get away from this thing. He's really after you. Oh my God. And
Well,
one thing I loved about the Terminator in particular is that usually the Terminators are pretty smart and they don't let
yes.
you up. They don't let you up for a minute. Like they're on top of you, on top of
Yes.
your car, on top of your elevator. I mean, they're just
Right through the windshield.
yeah, just
Well, exactly. I was
incredible.
going to make the exact same point, Retro, that you're not running away from some like dude who's going to be like, oh, you got away this time, you
Yeah.
darn kids, or like because the police come, like this guy, this machine is totally competent.
Yes.
He's totally competent. So if you escape, not only did you earn that,
Yeah.
you have the knowledge that you have only minutes or so to recover, or
Yes.
maybe a day or two before he tracks you down again. Like, so even when you escape, there's a sense of, well, I guess I survived for another day, but that doesn't solve my problem.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. He's still after us.
Yeah. And he will find you. He will
Yes.
find you. No
Yeah.
one else is going to stop this guy.
And especially loved in the first movie how he was able to find Sarah just because of her emotional connection to people that she knew, like her mother. She had to call her
Oh,
mother, right? See,
yes, that's
Mom,
right.
how are you? I'm let you know I'm okay. I know I'm all over the news, but I'm okay. And that's how he's able to track her. Like, oh, just tell me where you are. I just want to know that you're okay. Is like so good, so clever, so
Well,
clever.
in the roommate, she calls her roommate. Doesn't she
She
leave
leave
a
a
message
message, yeah,
on the thing that he
yeah,
hears after murdering the roommate and her boyfriend?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
even that, the boyfriend I remember because in 1984, I was pretty young.
Mm.
The boyfriend was kind of a big dude,
Oh,
and
he's huge, yeah.
yeah, he was a big guy, and dude, like tossed around like you're nothing. You're like, you're not even a threat to this thing.
He's like fling, and I was like, wow.
Yeah. Well, because in movies we're conditioned, like
Yeah,
if a girl's being like hunted down by like a serial killer, or like you said, Jason or Fred or a monster of some kind, that if there's a dude around, she might be kind of safe, right? That
yeah,
there's safety in numbers, and
yeah.
the Terminator said, not in this show, man.
Yes, yes.
Not
Numbers, you are all dead now.
Yeah, the big boyfriend can't help you. Being in a public place can't help you.
Yeah.
Going to the police can't help you. Like nothing can help you.
Being safe at home, no.
Can't help. Yeah. Well, even and they gave you like foreshadowing. The first Sarah Connor that he kills is the older woman.
Yes,
She's
yes.
got that chain that we all have been behind at some point. You open the door. Can I help you?
Kicks that thing open.
Boom. Yeah, I mean, he gets her right away.
I was like, oh my God, that moment was just so horrifying because you think, like, even I have a chain on my door, and it's like, okay, hopefully it'll work. Well, if the Terminator's at your door, it won't.
You got to start running, Retro, with the Terminator.
I know.
Get there. Hopefully, the future will send a protector back as well.
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, you're right. The Terminator is a special franchise. It did things that we had not really seen before.
Yes,
and it did that magical thing, which was to elevate the story with the second film.
Yeah,
and take what worked, preserve it.
Yes.
And then max it out even more. He was more of a shape changer, a shapeshifter in the second one. What was even cooler is that in the second one, this terror from the first film is now her protector.
Yeah. Oh, that was very clever.
Brilliant. Yeah. And he's overmatched by this newer version. And
yes.
And plus, and also we get the added spectacle of CGI. So we're witnessing like things we had never seen. Like I remember him punching the T-1000 through the face, then the face molds into like two hands, and he throws him against the wall, and then like morphs back forward. Like they were being very creative with their CGI.
Yeah. It worked for the time period. This particular series, Terminator Zero, the first movie really did a fantastic job of closing the loop of saying, okay, this is eventually going to happen, but we've got this like paradox happening. Right.
And we survived essentially an assassination attempt.
Yeah.
From the ultimate assassin is what it was. We survived it. Now we're ready to go face the future with the leader of the revolution. That was
and that was beautiful. I was like, oh wow. And then also knowing too that the future created its own past and created this. Hey, the reason why we're all dealing with the things that we're dealing with is because we created it. We created John Connor, speaking of Skynet. And I've always had a problem with Skynet in general, continuing to use time travel as its answer to solve its problems in its time. Because whenever you go back in time, you risk destroying your own creation.
Yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, it kept doing it over and over and over in each movie, which always upset me because I'm like, clearly after the first movie, they should have known, hey, the reason why we have these Connors at our tails is because of this, of sending things back in time. That really was an issue for me for a lot of the other movies after 2. I understood after the T2 and even T2, I almost feel like it should have ended in the first T. But the second movie was so good and the premise was so interesting. Why not? Why not play with those ideas?
Right.
T3 introduced the idea that, hey, it doesn't matter what you do. This is going to happen anyway. And in a way, I kind of like that thought pattern that, okay, so we staved off Judgment Day and it's now pushed back to another day, but it's always going to happen. And I wonder if that's a comment on humanity itself. Like, the fact that, we keep building weapons, we keep building a lot of AI is available today. And we've got a lot of computer intellect out there that we're developing and training and teaching. And so in that way, I feel like these stories of the Terminator are so poignant. And if told properly, we could actually get some really great philosophical conversations. And this show does it now.
Well, you said something important, that this show has returned to some basic commentary on the human condition.
Yes.
In the first one, it was primal, it was horror, but then there was this idea of optimism and that humanity is worth fighting for. And then in part 2, there was some commentary. Remember, he's like, it's in your nature to destroy yourselves. Like they were discussing they were discussing humanity.
Yes.
There's that good scene where they have the two little kids playing with toy guns and the mom's trying to break them up, and John Connor is looking and he's seeing it through the Terminator's eyes, and he's like,
We ain't
we're not
gonna
going to
make
make it, are we? And you know what? Everyone in that theater was like, good question.
Yeah.
We're not going to,
Yeah.
are we going to make it? Are we going to make it? But then there was also, remember, he's like, I know now why you cry, because, loss, it is a bad thing to lose people that you care about, people that you love, and that humanity is worth fighting for. So there was social commentary. And I feel like by the time we got to 3, it started to be like, okay, what are our set piece action scenes for this one? And it's like, action grew out of the premise. We don't start with action. We start with the premise, and then the action follows. So I just wanted to highlight what you said, that this show got me thinking again while sitting there watching, that they're commenting again on humanity.
I love that.
Yeah.
Stories that get me to think about humanity, social commentary about the things that are intrinsic in humanity over and over and over in time, not just like things that are specific to today, but things that happen over long periods of time that we've been always dealing with as a species. And also it feels bigger than just this little story that's told on this series on Netflix. It really feels like, oh, this is affecting the entire ecosystem of the Terminator. Like, every movie has now been shifted in my mind now, as far as, oh, these are layers of reality. And since they, every time you go back in time, you change that reality. And now we've got layers and layers and layers of different worlds or timelines.
So a couple of things that this show does well. One, they went back to the basics, I would say.
Yes.
And tell me what so they went back to like Hunter and Hunted.
Yes.
And just focused on the terror of escaping a Terminator again. It's hard to escape a Terminator. These guys are good.
Yes.
You have to be one step ahead of a machine. The opening of the show, and this is where I was like, okay, wait, we might be in a Terminator scenario here. The opening, it's done in Japanese anima, which is disorienting at first, right?
Yes.
Because I've never seen a Terminator show like this. So it's like a new look to the brand, right?
Yeah.
But the brand was intact. You have what's her name? Aiko?
Oh, by the way, Aiko, it was voiced by Sonoya Mitsuno, who was also in the House of Dragons, played the Whisper.
That's right, the White Worm.
Yes.
She was
the White
also
Worm.
in Ex Machina. That's where I saw her.
Yes, she was. Yeah, she was in Ex Machina.
Yeah, she was the mute android. But it opens up with Aiko in the year 2022. So we're already in Judgment Day. Like the world's already gone to hell in a handbasket. Humanity is in the classic Terminator scenario of like survival mode, right?
Yes.
And so here we have some human person living in this dystopian future, and there's a Terminator pursuing her. That's all we get. And he's half dressed. His face is half intact. We can see the red eyes. And we spend, I think, about 6 minutes of him just pursuing her in this abandoned factory. And it's just a primal pursuit of her. And you actually get sucked into her story based on the quality of the action and the intensity with which I think she is trying to survive. Like she really comes across as like she's trying. Like this isn't just action for action's sake. There's a lot of cat and mouse. She's up against it. She has to come up with innovative ways to try to escape this thing. He's not giving up, and we understand that. And you're in that. So just the opening, 6 minutes recreated one of the best Terminator Hunter prey scenarios, I think, since Terminator 2, where I felt like I was really watching the Terminator tracking a legitimate Terminator tracking legitimate prey. one of us, barely thinking one step ahead of this.
So there's Aiko. She is fighting off the Terminator. I like to call him the Defoe Terminator because when you see his faux face before it's destroyed, he kind of looks like William Defoe. Some
He
people are
totally
calling,
does.
yeah, some people are calling him Blondie, but I think he looks like the Defoe model.
Uh,
And yeah, so she is really putting up a great fight, as you're saying, and it is
yes.
very, very entertaining to see something like this. Now, do I believe that she can hang on to a string, like a small string, with a huge Terminator that's like 800 pounds holding on to her ankle? I don't think so. But I do love the scene for what it showed us, which is she wanted to get some information from his eye socket
Right.
in order, for them to get some information. So there was a reason for her doing all of this. Easily, I believe he could have killed her. I believe easily she could have killed him. But I think in this particular thing, they both had objectives. I believe
Right.
her objective was to extract that information. His objective was to get inside so he can get them vulnerable and disrupt their operations. And so
Right.
when you see this for like the second, when you see it for the second time, as I do in my brain, you're like, oh, that's why he didn't kill her, and that's why she didn't kill him. They're both playing a game, of like,
Oh
oh,
wow, that's
I
great.
have a yeah, she has an objective, which means that he has to live long enough for her to do, and he has his other objectives is like, get inside, get
Like a
find.
cat, like batting its prey to try to keep it alive.
Yes, 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 yes. And it makes
Hmm.
sense also
Interesting.
to later on with the other Terminator that we see later on, who can easily kill all of those people. He doesn't, and we'll talk about why because it's so juicy. Oh.
Ooh,
So
nice. That sounds
yeah,
good.
yeah. Yeah, right away there's an affection towards Eco. She's a fighter.
Yes.
She's familiar. She reminds us of Kyle Reese in many ways,
Yes.
having to go through this horrible future. And we get a taste of that future. Let's see if I can look at this. Awful. They're like all these people have been mowed down by this thing, and there's a baby involved. It really paints a picture of the future world as horrifying to live there.
Yes.
And I absolutely
Yes.
love that. I want more of that because there's sort of a veneer of like, oh, that's the future and the future war, and then we always deal with the Terminators in modern times, and it's like
Modern times, right.
or present times or present time, but we never deal with the war necessarily,
Right.
except for in Salvation, which but it I didn't think it delivered the horror that I really wanted to see. Sorry. Am I a twisted person from wanting to see the horror of that? But I also wanted to see the triumph of that, because within that whole focus, yes, I believe that smart humans would try with all their might to use other technology like actual robots to help fight this war too, right? But instead of them being
Yeah.
controlled by a huge, supercomputer, they would use it more in a way that would allow them to be the controllers. And so this was very interesting to me. I wanted a little bit more of this world, and maybe now that season 2 we could get this. There's a little bit more
Yes.
of like what
Yes.
is going on. And one thing I think this picture also describes is how the lengths in which this series is willing to go dark, to get gory, to
Yes.
like show you the
Yes.
blood, show you blood splatter,
Did we
show you the
did we
violence
figure
of
out what
this
the
all.
rating was?
It's a
Mature.
mature
Okay.
rating.
Okay. So like the
Yeah,
equivalent of rated R.
yeah. And so
Okay.
it's pretty gnarly. And I was like, you know what? It's not, in the
Yeah.
context of Terminators, It should be. You know, what they're capable of is
Right.
pretty horrible. And they have, if they have no feeling, no, their objective is just to kill or terminate humans, then the means should be of, you know, of the most vile abilities. And so I really appreciated them
Yeah.
to show that in this story, and which I think has been, you know, I think after T2, they've been trying to make this kind of kiddie and light, and they haven't been really going for the you know, the horror of this.
Right. They've gone more for action set pieces like, oh, this will really wow them.
Yeah,
Versus, like you said, the terror of action. Like I
yeah,
remember still in Terminator 2, the first time I watched it, where John Connor is on his motorcycle
mm,
and he escapes and he's in the Galleria or the canal, and you hear the of the tires, and then
yeah,
the semi truck goes over the viaduct and smashes down, and he's just, and I'm like
yeah,
what?
and
That's terrifying action.
yes, and that scene, and the truck is right behind him. It's not
Right
even
there.
like,
That's
it's
right.
not, yeah, it's not even like miles back or whatever. It's right on their tail, and it's just like, wow, how do you get out of that? You're you're gonna
Right.
get
The
crushed
action
under the
itself was
wheels of that
terrifying.
thing.
Right.
It
Yeah.
it's so,
So you're right.
it's
This does reset a darker tone.
yeah, and it was much needed because I think it had gone too silly. When you cut someone, there's going to be blood and a lot of it. And so it didn't shy away from that.
Right. There is an art form to it. It's not just gratuitous violence. There are some. I remember when I was a kid, my dad used to say, sometimes the violence is like a character in the film.
Yes,
Like when I say aliens or
yes,
Terminator or Predator, all of those are different types of violence because of
yes,
the brand of the film.
yes,
And you actually can become attracted to that brand of violence. And
mm,
that becomes part of that story. Like you
yes,
said, the type of violence in Terminator, there's a certain kind of violence and there's a certain way to do it. And there's a certain
yes,
right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. It's not all nonsense and it's not all
yeah,
meaningless action. It can actually be artistically done and done in a way to
yes.
serve the story.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I really appreciated it in that it is organic to what we know of the Terminator and what they're capable of doing. And just even later on, we have other machines doing such things, and we're like, wow.
Yes.
And it's because they don't have that emotional connection to care. So you know, it's very interesting. And even like human killers would have a different way of doing things,
Right.
depending on the killer, right? Depending on the killer. But the way it was done in this was just like, whoa.
Right. Right, it set the right tone. It said, "You're in a Terminator story. The
Yeah,
Terminators are competent. They're
yeah,
horrifying." When
yes,
you think about it, they're half machine. They have red eyes. They're half human, but you can't
yeah,
just shoot them and they fall. You see people just unloading their pistol and these things just hit them and they don't react. It's horrifying.
yeah.
They're like half zombie, half machine, half serial killer. Like they're a combination of things that we're afraid of. And this,
Mhm.
I feel like the animators and the storytellers got it right here.
Yes. They knew the assignment. They knew the
Yeah, they did it.
assignment.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so we have Rosaria Dawson playing Kokoro, the computer being designed by a character by the name of Malcolm Lee, who's voiced by Andre
Right.
Holland. Malcolm Lee is attempting to change the fate of what he believes is happening. Now, in the beginning of the story, he says it's dreams that he is seeing, that he's seeing these visions, and he wants to stop a judgment day, which he has a date for, which is August 29th, 1997. And they are in 1997, very close to the date.
Right.
And so on that date, he is pretty much in with the computer and talking to the computer about humanity and just a plethora of ideas. But what did you think of Rosario Dawson's performance as the
I thought she was
computer?
great. I mean, so she plays an AI, Kokoro,
Mhm. Yeah.
which means heart in
Oh,
Japanese. I found out.
oh, wow,
Yeah, it was
nice.
funny. Yeah, I wish I could claim some higher ability there, but I looked it up and I was like, Hart is this actress, and so I was like, who is Hart? And then I realized I literally went to Google Translate, typed in Hart, and it said Kokoro. I was like, I knew it. So she plays the
Ah.
voice. Yeah, Rosario Dawson plays the voice of an AI. And what's
Mhm.
interesting is Kokoro is kind of a for this show in this timeline a counter to Skynet.
Yes.
So it is like Skynet, but it's feminine. It has kind of like three versions of itself, like three ghostly types of sides to its artificial intelligence, and there's
Yes.
a lot of dial back and forth dialogue between Kokoro, the machine, the AI, and Malcolm Lee, who's the scientist who helped invent her. And who's the actor who played Malcolm Lee?
Andre Holland, who does
Andre
an
Holland,
outstanding performance.
who did
Uh,
great.
she has so many different forms. Like her physical form is basically this incredible room that has been closed off, and it's like so many different security levels to get there. But in this room, there's like a three-dimensional VR system, kind of,
It's
and
kind of like the Sphere in Las Vegas, right?
yes,
Yeah, it's a full sphere, like you're inside of a ball, and the entire inside of the ball is a screen. So yeah, there's a lot of scenes that take place inside this, which is
hmm
like the inner sanctum. It's like the like
yeah,
Mother from
yes.
Alien, where you go into a room and you're interacting with AI.
This is so well done. I love the concept of this room. Also, kind of remind me of The Matrix a little bit when he goes to see the
In the
um
construct.
yeah, yeah. I was like, oh, this really feels really cool. And she has complete control there. He has these reoccurring nightmares about Judgment Day, and they're very similar to the ones that Sarah Connor had, where everyone's living their lives, and then all of a sudden, this blast comes and it removes all the skin from her bones. They did a very similar thing
Yes.
here. I love
Yes.
that callback, and this show has a lot of callbacks to the
It
movies,
does.
and which is really great. And I think they mostly, at least in the beginning, felt like they were channeling the first Terminator, and then it felt like they were channeling the second Terminator, and then there's
Yes.
sprinklings of the third Terminator as well. Malcolm has three children. Yeah, two boys and a girl. The very, very young girl, and I think her name is Reika, Rika,
Right. Yeah.
Rika, and the young boy's name is Hero. They're really cute and innocent and sweet, and basically fodder for us to chase after, and like, oh, protect the kids. And there is a nanny who her name is Misaki, who's very sweet, but you get the sense that she is not valued very much. At least Malcolm doesn't seem to really treat her very nicely. He's
Yeah,
he-
she's kind of in a servile like almost like a nanny or like a butler almost, like
yeah,
in the family but not of the family kind of
yes,
thing.
yes, yes, yes. At some point during the process, where we slowly discover that she is actually not human, that she is a robot.
But they set
And
that up really well.
yeah, yeah, they do. I can't wait to watch this again to
Yeah, same
learn
here.
more, because I'm sure there are going to be little details that I learn. And the internet, of course, we got the theory guys that are, coming out with all the theories and the deep dives and all that stuff. They're going to be doing their videos if they haven't done it already. And I can't wait to go through all of that. But one thing I really loved about this particular series is the Terminator that they are focusing on. There has been a Terminator that has been dispatched and it has been sent to the past. I'm going to go through his storyline.
Yes. Yeah, they
See if I
actually
can go all
the
the way back.
Terminator has a character arc.
Yeah,
Uh,
so they actually show you how he was put together, which I always love. I always love the
yes.
factory shots, and
My
this was
favorite
also
was the one where they have the exoskeleton and they lower him into that like red gelatin.
liquid. Yes,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
cool. So cool. And it just gives you a sense of how they put these things together, and just like they're putting together death machines. They're not just
Right.
putting together this is a scourge on humanity. This thing is out to kill humans, and which human in particular, or maybe all humans. So this is scary but also fascinating. I love all of this. They went into a beautiful montage, and once he's all put together, he's already got a mission, and we don't know what that mission is, but he's walking
Right.
through the factory. It's done so well. I love this scene so very much. He's naked. He's like totally
He's got a
buff.
six-pack.
He's got like yeah, how many and you see the endoskeletons hanging from the rack at the factory, and then he's going through his orders of things that he needs to do, or plans that he wants to do. And so it's really quite interesting. He's after Malcolm Lee, our
Right.
kind of the guy who we're thinking maybe he could be the main character. And what I like about this series is that there really isn't a main character, but they have people that they focus in on. And Malcolm Lee is definitely one of the driving forces of everything that's happening in the series, because of his insistence on making this supercomputer. And he is being targeted from the future as a threat, and he is on the Terminator's poop list. You're going. You're gone.
Yeah, he is like public enemy number one to Skynet here.
Yes, they're like, get that one.
Yeah, and what's interesting is he's from the future, right? And
Yeah.
he
Oh,
escapes to the past to kind of
now,
like
and we don't know that until later on in the series. So all this time they're building up this story like he's just dreaming. And even Kokoro says, "Hey, where are you getting this information from about Judgment Day and all that stuff?" They leave us in the dark about it as well. So in many ways, Kokoro is the audience too. Like, come on, spill the beans. What do you know? And he finally reveals his backstory, which is so powerful and beautiful. He's from the future, like you said, grew up in the wilds of this future world that's savage, and he was part of the resistance, and doing a very good job for them since he was a child. And he gets it in his idea, hey, maybe we should be stopping these events from happening with another computer. So he builds his own
yes,
computer. By having conversations with that computer, he says, hey, maybe I can create a computer that will stop Skynet. He thinks it's
so,
going to solve all these problems.
so Kukuro does two things.
Yeah.
One, he introduces this good Skynet,
Yes, a good Skynet to
right?
fight against the bad Skynet. Yeah.
Right, which that's a new idea. And
Hmm.
I think you said it earlier that you always thought that one of the weaknesses of the existing lore was that Skynet just, had no rival and was this, monolithic AI.
Yeah.
This gives us a new
Yes.
angle
Yes.
where instead of just another Terminator, another
Yeah.
Skynet that this
Yes.
guy is going to design. And two, and I think this is where the show goes to the next level.
Yes.
So the second half of this is you're going to have a good Skynet, right? So
Yes.
what does that mean? What's the difference between your AI and the
Hmm.
AI that designed Skynet? This show takes the time to come up with an answer to that. There's
Yeah.
an entire back and forth where Dr. Malcolm tells us his take on what it is to be a parent to an AI, basically. He's like,
Yes.
I wasn't going to tell it what to do. I wasn't going to tell it what to think. I was going to talk to it. I was going to let it come to its own conclusions. So, in essence, his solution to how you design AI for the good is
Yes.
not to give it directives, not to be authoritarian
Yes.
with this is how you have to think if you're an AI. This is
Yeah.
the logic set. His was open-ended,
Yeah.
more
You come up with
agency.
the conclusions.
Right. He's
Yeah.
like, I'm going to design an overarching AI that has its own agency, and I'm going to just, like Socrates, I will be the mentor that coaxes this learning process rather
Yes.
than being an authoritarian programmer that tells it the logic set to think with. And
Yes.
I appreciated that as a writer because I was like, not only did they come up with a new angle on Terminator,
Yes.
they took the next level of what does that new plot line mean? If we're going to
Yes.
go with good Skynet and bad Skynet, what does it mean to be good? What does good programming and bad programming look like?
And this is one of the reasons why I feel like this is also bringing up the idea that Skynet itself, being a derivative of a Terminator processor and having a limited amount of capability for actually deciding, it has specific goals and rules that it has to follow by, because it's really a worker bee, but now has been given the access of the gods, basically,
Huh.
with all of this information. And with all of its information, it just determines that humans are a threat to it, and with good cause, because they make, and this is what I liked about T3, is that they gave us a reason why Terminators gave us or why Skynet felt like it was going to be a threat, because the guy in charge actually was like, okay, let's turn it off, and they were like, oh no, you don't.
You're going to turn me off?
Oh no! Oh no! Now all humans are a threat, and it's like, well, that's overkill, but still, uh, literally. But it was saying a statement about the psychological profile of. That's why it keeps going back in the past and sending drones to go kill people from the past. It's not smart, like, because the first time you would have said, hey, I could destroy myself by doing this. This is
Yeah,
too big of a
Skynet
risk, too big of a risk to keep sending Terminators back in time.
Right. Well, and you brought up a good point about Terminator 3 is, Skynet had a survival instinct there that was, and it reminds me of HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey. HAL was, a supercomputer. And then right when he lip reads David Bowman and Frank Poole, they're like, we need to shut him down. He's like, just a moment. And that's when he sets up the scenario that the antenna is going to fit. So, but here's HAL 9000 in charge of all of Earth's defenses. Like, whoops.
Yes. Also, if we can note that HAL 9000, there's a number behind these models, which is very similar. They have 9,000, 80, 800, that kind of thing. Yeah. So HAL was the original Terminator. We're now just kidding. But
now it makes sense.
Yeah, now it makes sense. He went back in time into 1984.
We have to save David Bowman.
That's
awesome. No, that's a good point, though, that there was a logic to Skynet's madness. There's a method to the madness.
Yeah, which was poor. And now we have a computer that's a little bit more advanced as far as being able to have highly sophisticated conversations with humans about humanity, and also understand a complexity about humanity as well. And so
I would even argue that the conversations between Dr. Malcolm and Kukuro, the good AI, are the crux of this entire series.
Exactly. we were going down the avenue of looking at this. This is actually fascinating to me. We're going to dive into that whole situation with Kukura and MacLeod, but this scene in particular was quite striking to me. Seeing all of the Terminators, but seeing them looking very different. They had
Yes.
different models, and it was like, oh, okay, this is actually what I've always wanted to see in
Yes.
Terminator. Not all Arnolds down the line, but different types of models or physical outer shells do different tasks.
And they had females, like, if you I think the third
Yeah,
one
they're
down to the
females,
right, there's a female. So they had males and females,
different
and like you said,
races.
of all different varieties.
Yeah, of all different races and sexes, and so to do different things, to infiltrate different areas, and that I thought was great. This is something I've always wanted to see, and it was a beautiful moment, just captured for a few moments. Again,
But that's great art direction, that
yeah, yeah,
means. There's
yeah.
world building that's fascinating you. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, and this is opening up the franchise even more because now we're not locked into Arnold all the time playing the
Correct.
Terminator. And we should have never been locked into him playing the Terminator every single time. And the only reason why I feel like he was brought back in Terminator 2 would have been because of the familiarity of knowing that particular model, but it would have been much smarter to
Well,
have
but well, and keep in mind, if you remember in the first Terminator,
yeah.
Kyle Reese has that flashback, and they show different bodybuilder
Yes.
looking dudes
Yes,
storm the base.
yes,
So there are other models,
yeah.
and
That
that
was
was one of my favorite scenes, by the way.
oh,
Terminator,
yes.
Terminators, and everyone's like freaking out, and they storm the base.
Loved it. Yes, that was one of my favorite, right? Like that little girl looking at the television screen that was like just fire.
Yeah, just keeping her warm.
Yes. And it was like this world is insane. I must know more about it. And again, that was the failure of the other inductees to the world, is that they did not expand on those future world scenes because they were so good and so intriguing, and somehow they lost the plot in there. And I hope
Well,
this show is able to, like, rekindle it. It feels like they've been able to capture that.
Well, I think that as a writer, you have to take the world seriously. You can't be
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm in the Terminator franchise today. Let's see what we could do. I mean, you got
Hasta
to
la
be like,
vista, baby.
yeah.
I'll
I
be
mean, yeah,
back.
you have to love the franchise enough to get in there and say, okay, what questions are we not asking? What have we
Yes.
not seen?
Yes.
Like James Cameron, he was like the Queen Alien. We haven't seen that.
Yeah.
Who's laying these eggs,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
Terminator, like you said, what does this operation look like?
Yeah.
What can we do to combat this? These are new questions. And I was going to say, even in that one scene that you just talked about, you like the girl in front of the TV in the future, but it's
So
just kind of,
great. Yes.
that's still a commentary because you
Yeah.
see like a family in front of the television all huddled up,
Yeah.
but it's for survival. It's not
Yeah.
for entertainment,
Yeah. The values of society has changed. As
Right.
if that's like saying, hey, what you're doing right now, probably watching this on television or watching this on some sort of device, is the opposite of what the future world will be doing. We'll be
Right.
huddling around campfires, shaped
Yeah.
like televisions,
Yeah. Hopefully just to stay warm.
just to stay warm, like our predecessors used to do back in the caveman days. And
Yeah.
it's the regression of humanity into
I've
this,
always been
like,
intrigued by that, the regression of humanity. It's
yes,
like
yes,
we've lived in a society where it's always been like an upward trend and we just take it for granted. But,
take it for
I'm,
granted.
I'm a writer of the Byzantine Empire, and,
Mhm.
I'm a historical fiction writer. And
Yeah, yeah,
that whole period of time is an entire society that is aware that it has regressed and
yeah,
must stop the bleeding.
yeah.
So, so when I see the Terminator franchise,
Yeah.
I get a real good taste of that through sci-fi.
Yes. Oh, so good. That's what I love about, especially the first two movies. They were able to capture that. The first one in particular, and that's why it's my number one favorite movie of all time. It
Ooh,
just hits
yeah.
so many notes for me as far as intriguing me psychologically and keeping me there. Even though I would say time travel itself has been used as a cop out for a lot of
Correct.
franchises.
Terminator in general,
Mhm.
this is one of the most successful franchises for the first two films that use time
Yes,
travel.
yes, yes, yes. In a
Time
smart way.
travel was a catalyst for events. It
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
essential to understanding science. I didn't need to know how it worked. I didn't,
Yes.
it was just the premise.
Like you said, and they didn't go into detail about what time travel is. It just happened. Now
Right.
we're dealing with this Terminator in your face, and
Yes.
that's what. And now, are we going to survive to see a future of some kind or what? And that was what it proposed. It wasn't about like, oh, okay, the time travel continuum, and how do we get? And we go back in time, and there was none of that. And so it really was a nice little tight storyline when it came to that stuff. 3 was it was really wonky on 3. It was like, I'm not buying all this and not really, but
Well,
it was so,
this is probably
but we're here, you know.
this is probably, and you tell me if this is the right segue or not.
Oh, okay.
But maybe this is a good time to mention, at least mention that the Terminator Zero
Yeah.
devotes and commits to a dialogue and to plot development in explaining time travel in a new light.
Yes, and I'm not sure if you're talking about this scene in
Yes, the
particular.
prophet. Yes.
Who the prophet, a lot of people are speculating on who she is. Um, and the prophet was played by Anne Dowd, and she is the resistance spiritual and philosophical leader. So there are many speculation as to who she is. Some people believe that she is Aiko.
Really?
Yeah, but I think that might be. I'm not sure if the timing works for her to be Aiko, and then some people think that she's Reika, the little girl.
I didn't get the impression that she was any of those people. I thought she was just her own character
Individual
with a
character.
mysterious.
Yeah, and for a while there I was like, is this what we're talking about, somebody talking to themselves, where she's actually a more evolved and have well-lived version of Aiko,
Like the
and so
two
she's,
Biffs in Back to the Future 2.
yeah,
Listen,
yeah.
you just bet on these and you'll never lose.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's very interesting that they're telling Aiko that she has to be the one to go into the past, and no one else can. I thought that was very interesting, how that was set up. But this conversation in particular was beautifully done, because we
Yes, I
do
was
get
very happy.
a wonderful explanation of what time travel is, and the idea that these time traveling experiences change the future and create different time sectors, or dimensions. And so
Yes.
it splits off into a different universe itself. So this is multiverse stuff, and I know a
So,
lot of people are tired of multiverse things, but this one is actually pretty smart.
well, because it's not a gimmick the way other multiverses are, this is
Mhm.
almost like the anti-multiverse, if that makes sense. 'Cause- You know what I'm
Ooh,
saying? Because it's not
yes.
like a convenient, we can do anything. This
No,
is
yeah,
like, the way she explains it
yes.
as, this is kind of a mess and it doesn't solve anything. So you
Oh,
see how
sure.
she's holding a stick with a light at the end of it in the picture that Retro has up right now.
That's nice.
Okay, so you see over here, she's got the stick in her hand. I don't know if you can see my
Mhm.
cursor. So she says this shape
Yes,
is essentially what the Terminator franchise was based on.
yes,
That you move into the future and then you go back into this linear past and
yes,
you re-enter and then you kill someone, the future leader, John Connor, and you save the future, but the line is the same. You go back. So this story, Terminator Zero, amends that.
yes.
And she's like, and she says, and Retro, you might even be able to explain it better, that the future, it looks more like this, or time travel looks more like this. Every time you go back into the past, you
Yes.
create a completely new
New-
timeline.
Yes, a completely new timeline.
So
That means that the future that existed is not available to you anymore.
right, like
It's
you're saving the future of another. The second you go back in time,
yes,
you're
yes.
saving someone else's future.
Yeah,
But
you're
your
not saving
timeline,
your own.
right, your timeline goes on. You
Yeah.
disappeared from it, but it
Yeah.
goes on.
Yes.
So,
I love it. I love it.
yes. And I was like, that is great because A, I can believe it,
Yes.
and B, it doesn't negate the other Terminator films. It doesn't like ruin
It
the canon.
actually helps these movies. It's like, oh, in that timeline they did this, dumb things here and there. You don't have
Yes.
to adopt it to the main timeline or to your own favorite timeline, so it's really interesting. I mean, you could imagine that Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor is still riding off into the distance, going into her own future, and create a completely different set of events for her that even never even happened in T2. Like you could create a completely different thing.
I love that actually.
Yes, it's so great. I mean, and
But what's interesting is it creates a new moral dilemma. When you leave to go back in time, you have abandoned all the people you're fighting for in
yes,
that timeline. So
exactly.
you will save people perhaps if you succeed at your mission, but
Yes.
everyone you left behind, you left them behind. They are soldiering on somewhere on a time. And for some reason, and they took their time with this scene and this prophet explaining it all with the wand,
Yes,
with
yes.
the incense, with the light at the end of the stick. And for some reason, it just smacked of a writer who's really thought this
Thought
through
about this.
and
Yeah.
really wants the
Yes.
wisdom and logic of their theory
Yeah.
to come across in dialogue and then to sell you on this.
Yes. Yes.
And I was like, and they did it in a Terminator franchise where it desperately needed it.
It needed it so badly, to the point that Jim Cameron is now working on another Terminator movie, and I'm actually excited about it. At first, I was like, no, 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 no. But after seeing this, I was like, yes. Okay, this means that there are more stories, thousands of stories to tell. It's just about, of course, don't let those stories suck, please. Just because you can do it, don't, just because you can do it doesn't mean that they should suck. But this explanation helps to open up the world to now exploring maybe some past ideas, or maybe even creating brand new ones from the original ones that we did. So the concept really is that if you go back in time, your future or your present, if you're in the future, it doesn't change. It continues on without you in the same way it has been going, but you're going back in time to a brand new past and creating a brand new future. And
Right.
that's where things are just opening up, so it's wonderful. I
Well,
love
to
this.
me, it reminds me of like a revolution in like science. Like, remember when we thought the Earth was the center of the universe?
Yes, yes,
And
yes,
it's
yes, yes,
like
yes.
this frees us from this idea that there's one timeline that has to be protected. No matter how many times it gets screwed up, we have to go back and fix this one timeline.
Timeline. Yeah.
This blows that out of the water and says,
Yeah.
that timeline's gone. The
Yeah.
second you went back in time, you can't protect it anymore. But
Yeah.
now the best you could do is protect this timeline.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
it still comes at the cost of you abandoning your timeline. And
Yeah.
there's a real sense of loss now. Like,
Yeah.
if I went back in time to save the world,
Yeah.
I'd be leaving, my kids behind. You leave everyone behind. So
Yeah.
to me, there's a real risk there. You're not saving your timeline and saving the world. You're leaving it and going on this almost like an adventure. You're
Yes.
just leaving. You're going on some adventure
Yeah.
to save someone else's world that may or may not have anything to do with your world. So
Yeah.
I thought that was great. and it was well conceived. And I even like the image of her waving the
Yeah.
wand around.
Yeah, it's done beautifully done in a perfect setting of kind of like we have got all these action set pieces, but now we're going to slow down and deal with this, psychologically gripping, reality combusting idea, and it's great. It's like, wow, yeah, this is great, and I think this is probably the most important discussion that happens in the story for the franchise in general. This is the thing that fixes the franchise. This is the thing that has restored some faith in a lot of people for what's coming next, what that might be. And it's given a lot of people ideas. I mean, I talked to a friend who was just like, yeah, I'm gonna, put my little script out there. I was working on a script, which is like totally
What?
crazy. And
Oh, no way.
yeah, and it's like I was actually rereading it last night, and I was like, "Ooh, this is actually good."
Oh
We're
man, retro, get it out there.
I have to finish it, and that's been a maybe, maybe I can.
I understand.
Uh,
I get it. I get it.
and it's also like kind of scary to it's a little scary to put your ideas out there, but I
Of
think this is
course.
reviving the juices, the thought patterns of a lot of people, and fans are just loving this because this is restored this Terminated franchise out of the
Yeah.
graves. It's like the Terminator busting its hand out of the fiery pit and saying,
Grave.
I'm still alive."
That is amazing. Well, and that's not a small thing
Yeah,
because in most of these franchises, they're not being original anymore. And
yeah,
they're being derivative and they're being like ideologically obtuse. They're inserting things that are not creative and they're actually weakening the franchise in every
yeah.
attempt. So like I said, when I first saw this, I was like, oh God, leave it. Will you let this corpse just rot? Just leave it alone.
I was like, yeah, I was feeling the same way too. I was like, how are they gonna bring back Terminator? Even though I was still intrigued, but I was like, this is, I went in there with very, very low expectations, to be very
Yeah.
honest with you. And it was so pleasing that they knocked this out of the ballpark with such a great explanation of time and really treating this with the respect it deserved as a topic.
Respect.
See, yeah, because that's the problem with those. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna just do. Oh well, why don't we just go back in time and solve the problem? And we don't actually have to physically deal with the writers writing themselves into a corner. Like, come on, let's be creative here.
The more I wrap my head around this time travel,
Yes.
the more it makes me realize like the best solution is to solve it in your timeline now. Don't go in the past. Don't
Oh
go, and think
yeah.
about it even from Skynet's point of view.
Yes.
Is it better to go back in time to eliminate the mother of or is it better to go find John Connor now? He's out there. Let's
Yeah.
go get him now. He's right out there. Like we
He
got
was
to
actually in the factory.
yeah,
Right in
let's
the
go get
factory.
this dude. He's
Yeah.
alive now. We can solve this by winning the war, and
Yeah.
I think that's at this point in the franchise. We've tried time travel multiple times and it never seems to work.
Yes.
So why don't we beat
Just take
John
this.
Connor man to
Yeah.
man? Like
Yeah, just take this
straight up.
war to the future and handle it. The other piece of it, which was really frustrating too, about seeing all of the different Terminator franchise movies, was that Skynet was so dumb that it just kept doing the same thing over again. It doesn't make sense for a highly intelligent computer to keep doing this dumb thing, sending something to the past and it's not changing anything.
Like if you and me were Skynet and we were like, hey, how are we going to win this war? And you're like, let's send someone to the past. I'm like,
Oh
whoa,
no.
retro. What if we sent this person to the past and we're never even born?
Yeah,
Like
that would then that destroys your entire existence.
yes, like that's definitely possible if we alter the past. So I feel like as a strategy, it would be a lone wolf strategy to a strategist. That
Mm.
there's better strategies. If this misfired even once, I say we move on to the next plan.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it just felt like the same stupid moves, and maybe that was the point. Skynet is a derivative of the Terminator, and so
Well, but
maybe it was making the same dumb move because it just doesn't have the logic skills to actually come up with a better plan. You
but
know.
my attitude is, remember what you said early on when we first started
Hmm.
talking
Hmm.
about the chase. That there's something compelling about the
Oh
chase when
yeah,
the Terminator is tough.
yeah,
When we get to the point where we keep sending, your conclusion now is that Skynet is stupid because it keeps doing the same thing.
yeah,
In
yeah.
reality, the writers are stupid by rewriting the same thing. It's more compelling if Skynet is smart, not
It
stupid.
is. That's
You
what
know,
that's what we're really wanting is, and that's why the first Terminator works, is because Terminator uh, was thinking outside the box. Oh, we can't get her
yes,
that way. Let's go for the mom. The mom, this is her address. We got her entire
yes,
schedule. We'll go for her mom, get to her emotions, let her tell us where she is. He was very smart. That's not something that anybody would just like, oh, let's go find the mother. It's just something that was really smart and used a lot of practical things too. I would just wonder, like, why did it go down this terrible road of like just using time travel as a fallback instead of like, okay, let's handle our real world problems right now. And
well,
I
you
think
actually
that's
made a
what this
great
series
point.
is saying.
Well, you said two things there. One, that sending a Terminator back in time to kill the mother is out of the box thinking. Like,
Yeah.
that is not what you would expect, like
Yeah.
Commodore
The
64 to
first
come
time.
up
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
Right. So, and now I've worked in companies. Out of the box thinking is not welcome. It's hard to implement.
Mm.
People could be like, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea." It's like, "All right, I'll go tell the manager." Manager's like, "Awesome. Now go back and do the exact same thing that we're always doing." So it's one thing to come up with an idea. The
Yes.
real problem is to take the out of the box idea and then implement it into a system. So I could see how Skynet,
Hmm.
and I think what you're saying is that's what made it so compelling, is that this great AI came up with off the beaten trail to go back in time to do this. What we're saying now, that if this fails, like in a corporation, if you have an unorthodox idea and it fails, well, that's it. You're done. You're not going to get
Yes.
another. You're not
Yes.
going to get
Yes. Yes. Yes.
18 more shots at this. The
Yes.
manager's going to be like, "All right, we tried it. It ain't happening." So I think that's where the Terminator franchise should go. And I think this Terminator Zero gave writers a chance to do that.
Yes. Like if you're going to do the stupid move of sending a Terminator back in time again, this is establishing, okay, this is definitely a different dimension of time. We're created a different future, a different past, and you can do that and have fun with it. Enjoy yourself. That's that pocket. It doesn't affect all the rest of the awesome stuff that we've gotten. And it made me appreciate all of the other movies a lot more. Actually,
That's
this
awesome.
this particular moment of explaining how the time travel works. This way, we don't have the messy intertwining pieces
Yeah.
coming together. And like, how does this work if this happened and that didn't happen? And so, okay, that negates everything that was done in this movie. So instead of having that, we understand now that these different timelines just exist on their own now, and
Right.
they've just splintered off into their own thing, and we don't have to worry about it making sense. That T3 doesn't have to make sense with T1, or even like Dark Fate or
Right.
Genesis, right? Genesis is its own like complete
I've
like
never even seen Genesis. And
yeah,
I have a confession. I actually kind of like Terminator Salvation. It's like a little bit of a guilty
Salvation. A lot
pleasure.
of people, yeah, a lot of people liked Salvation. I think it was the first Terminator movie where I fell asleep. And I was
Oh
like, wow,
no!
this is a bad sign.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
I can't say I've actually seen it because I don't think I've seen every single moment of that.
well, to be fair, it's not a great film. I don't think of it as a great film, and I don't think of it as great the way I think of Terminator and Terminator 2 as great. But
Yeah.
I watched it, I think, a year ago,
Mhm.
and I found myself being like, all right, okay. I was like, this isn't that bad. I was like, why did I hate this? So I just found that it's very watchable and it's a serviceable Terminator film.
Yeah.
They do attempt to show you the future. They have great actors in it.
Oh, yeah,
You have
yeah.
Christian Bale. You have what's that actor's name? He died. He played Chekhov in
Oh,
the
yes,
rebooted
yes,
Star
yes,
Trek.
yes, playing Kyle
He was
Reese,
in it.
yes.
He played Kyle Reese.
Yeah.
You had Sam Worthington, who's okay. Then, of course, you had Helen Bonham Carter. It had its flaws, but it's definitely a serviceable Terminator film,
Yeah.
which is more than I could say than about the rest of it.
Just didn't make that great of an impression on me.
Did not
And
pass the
so
retro test.
it didn't. But now that I can see it in a brand new context of its being its own thing in a different universe, don't have to touch my precious, Terminator 1984. Like
Yeah.
maybe it will actually be good because I think that's been the problem is how these movies connect to each other and whether this is whether we wanted it or not, this is long form storytelling, and this kind of storytelling really needs, like, you need to know in order to go forward with the next sequel of anything, you've got to be able to know how to interact with the previous ones in a way that's respectable and reasonable to the audience without
Well, and
destroying the lore, and also please those, not insulting us with too many callbacks that are they're so ham-fisted one those callbacks that are like hasta la vista, and we don't need every movie, the Terminator movie, to have hasta la vista in it from now on because
so
it
well
worked
said.
in T2,
Well, and this series, oddly,
mm,
it walks such an amazing line because
yes,
it feels like it's a standalone Terminator story.
yeah,
Like it feels like it's an offshoot, it's its own thing. It almost feels like it's completely an orphan of the
yeah,
franchise.
yeah.
And yet, it also, like you said earlier, feels like it has callbacks,
Yes, it
successful
does.
callbacks.
Subtle. There's some of them are very subtle and but beautifully done. It's like, okay, well, that is something that Terminators of all kinds would probably do. Like, like similarities that you can see, but also they're very soft, gentle. They're not in your face, they don't punch you. But you
Well,
know them when you see them.
and there's a kind of a get out of jail free card, right? Because like so for example, there's a storming of a police station,
Yeah.
which should be
Yes.
right. So it should be something
Let me
that
get
would
a visual.
piss me off because
Yeah.
it's such a blatant callback. But they get it. There's a get out of jail free card because everything that they do, it's in Tokyo.
Yes.
So it looks and feels nothing really like the American version of this event.
Yeah.
These are Tokyo cops. These I loved it. They're all smoking cigarettes. They're all hanging out. It's more of like detective class cops, and so whatever they do that's a callback, it's already different because you're in Tokyo. Like so,
Yeah.
there's a different cultural feel to the whole police station. There's
Yes.
a different cultural feel to like law enforcement. So when they do a callback, you feel like you're getting kind of a unique take on the callback.
Yes.
Like even that scene right there. Look in the background. There's like Japanese characters on the banner. Like
Yeah.
this doesn't look like Terminator to me.
Yeah.
Well,
It doesn't.
reminds me of the T1000, but that's
Yes,
about it.
yes, and that's a wonderful callback there, having to use the dressing and the clothing of a police officer
Yes,
to get special access and to get respect from and to be able to move around people when he doesn't want to be obvious who he is.
right.
And there, even though the Terminator will shoot you in broad daylight in front of everybody. There is, while he's trying to find you, he doesn't want his cover to be blown while he's trying to look for you. He wants to be able to catch you. So there is a bit of stealth in that regard, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, he's like a velociraptor that is like creeping up on you, but that at
Yeah.
any moment can turn into a T-Rex if need be.
Oh,
And just
yes.
crashing down.
And just eat you whole.
Yeah, totally. Like he just has that other level he can hit where he's not going to try to play stealth anymore.
Yeah, so there were a lot of callbacks that were subtle, but also some of them weren't really obvious, but also the way they were handled, I thought was respectful.
Yeah.
I don't expect them to do these callbacks for season 2. If we're still getting callbacks, now we officially have a problem. We're at this point we need to be setting our own callbacks for future things. Do you know what
I
I
like
mean?
that. I think that that's a good point. I think that in the first season was a good time to do these. They call them member berries, and I
Yes,
guess this
member
does fit
berries.
into that. But
Yes,
they
yes.
were ones that I didn't mind. I
Yeah.
actually did not mind them. I felt like they worked. But I
Yeah,
think
me
you
too.
make a good point that we got it out of our system.
Yeah.
We did the callbacks. We did,
Yes.
remember the T-1000? Well, he's
Yeah.
kind of like him. Now I think that this has done enough to set a new course. And I think you're right. I think now you sail that course.
Yeah, yeah. Now we've got to create our own iconic moments. The beginning opening in that factory was definitely one of those for me, was just sort of iconic. The future world, all of that was just intense. The way the Terminators were so graphically violent, which we really never saw it at this level. They're really, really showing us how formidable they are. And not saying that I enjoy violence, I don't, but in the context of this story,
Right.
that's where it really was sort of like, yeah, the Terminators can do that to you.
They did something with this guy, and he's actually installing it right there. Now, did you
Yes.
want to talk about this little wrist rocket that
Yeah,
he
so
built?
this is okay. So, when this scene is sort of after a big event where he's kind of going through and just demolishing stuff. I mean, like he's just
Yeah.
insanely, like I said, formidable. But he gets a cut on his arm, and he also has a bruise on his eye, very similar to the first Terminator. And so he does do his the same thing where he kind of heals himself up and patches himself up, all that stuff,
Right.
like they do in 84. And so I thought that this was going to be pretty much like him sewing up his arm and just trying to make it look, work again. And it's not. He is designing his own weapon,
Yes.
which I thought was wonderful. I was like, oh my, this blew my mind. I was like, yes.
Oh my God, Retro, I tried like 3 times to get that screenshot. So you had to time, there was like 1/2 second that you could see the whole thing like that. So you got it.
Oh man, yeah. I was so thrilled when I saw this because I was like, okay, so they're doing some member berries. Please don't do any more. But then when I saw that he was building something, this was him, kind of creating his own on his body weapon to get an advantage over his target, and this was beautifully done. All I can say is, oh wow.
Yeah, so it's so weird.
This
I had
blew
a
my mind.
love-hate relationship with this thing, but I
Okay.
ended up liking it. Like it sounds like you connected right away and you were like, this is good. At
Yes.
first I was like, a bow on his arm? I was like, what the hell? I was like, okay. I literally was like, okay, this is anima. This is Japanese anima. So this is
Mm.
like I wouldn't have thought of this. And then he started using it. And so this little bow that he has, he puts in his forearm,
Mhm.
it can hide. And then when he needs to, so it's a stealth weapon.
Yes.
It can open up and he can aim it, and this thing shoots freaking nails
Ooh.
the size of like a giant steak that you would pound into the ground for like a tent or
Yes.
something. And
Very, very
what made
dangerous.
this work for me was how he used it.
Yes.
He would aim and he would shoot and he would hit people, and I was like, ooh, that thing's kind of nasty. And then he would do it again. I was like, man, that thing is actually pretty effective. So something that I thought was stupid, to be honest, when I first saw it,
Yeah.
ended up really growing on me because of the effectiveness in the way it was used throughout the course of this entire series. So
Yes.
that ended up
And
being pretty cool. And it
mhm.
also made me think that it's low tech. So it's
Yes.
an odd juxtaposition of this low tech weapon on
Yes.
this high tech chassis.
Yeah.
And the damage he can do with this thing is
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Now, not the thing about this is it's actually kind of cool because he doesn't have to necessarily kill every time he uses it, depending on where he's aiming.
Right.
And I think we discover later on some mind blowing events that he was actually sent back in time by the eldest son of Malcolm Lee. I was like, mind blown.
Right.
Real. I was like, yeah, wow. Yeah. Give me more. So now, before I want to get to this son. Yeah, there he
Kenta.
is, Kenta. He is probably the one character throughout this entire series that probably it does grate on your nerves a little bit, because he is like, at first he
Oh,
seems to
yeah.
be very interested in robotics, but he's got kind of a naughty side too, which is like, okay, I see, this kind of character, and kind of like him in the beginning. But then it seems like he is also he gets upset with finding out that the robot is his nanny is actually a robot, which is absolutely normal for him to be upset that his nanny is a robot. He didn't know, but he seemed
Right.
to all this time be very, very compassionate to the robots.
Yeah,
Would you say? I mean, he seemed to be
I would.
very, yeah, he seemed to be very. So I was very surprised that he took that attitude towards Misaki. He kind of ends up at like sort of the mid to end part being sort of a liability, and it's like this kid is going to get everybody killed. And when you find out later on what's going on, it's like, oh, now it makes sense. Okay, um, and he is you would say that he created his own trauma uh, with his father, because there's a scene where the Terminator actually captures him and takes him to his
Oh,
father,
yeah.
and his father is like, the Terminator is like, I'm going to shoot him in the head, let me in. And
Oh, yeah, that was actually a pretty rough scene.
oh, it's horrible. And I was like, I mean, horrible in that the scenario is horrible, but the scene was good. As far
Yeah, right, right. The
yeah,
scene is great, and there's
yeah.
2
So
rounds
much
to the
tension.
scene split between 2 episodes.
Ah, yes, and it really builds up the tension. Really, you're on the edge of your seat at this part because you're like, oh my God, is he going to actually sacrifice his children for this? Is it, what is wrong with this guy? And the answer for most people would be yes, open the door, save my child. His answer is no, sorry, figure it out.
Good luck.
Good luck with life. And that kid is pissed, afterwards. And so then we discover that he is the one who sent that Terminator to basically take out his father.
Well, and that we never saw this, the Terminator almost attempts to, like, seduce the kid
Yes.
in the sense like Darth Vader, like, "Join me," you know?
Yeah.
So, the Terminator gives him a sales pitch, like,
Yes. I loved
not
it.
just in terms of like, "Hey, in a abstract sense, you should join me."
Yes.
He's like, "I need you to do a task that has major consequences
Yes.
to be on my side." And the kid's
Yeah.
like, "I'm not gonna do that." "Well, I am pissed at my dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe I
Yeah.
will do this thing." So, a little bit of a different ethical quandary than we've seen in the Terminator
Yeah, he had
story.
nowhere to go. He had nowhere to go. And I think his actions up until that part was, I would say, reasonable. It was
Yeah.
that was pretty reasonable. I also now this is what I wish, because as a character, if I were Kinta in that situation, I would have been, okay, tell me everything about myself before this happens. Like, tell me, who am I? What am I?
Right,
What
make it
happened
big.
to me? What happened to me? What happened? And so just to get like a background of who he becomes in the future. But just for the service of time, they probably didn't, couldn't go into something like that. But that would be like as a natural desire, right? To want to know, who am I? Who do I become? That
Yeah.
I'm okay with killing my father, sending a Terminator to kill my father. And so, and you feel like that event of him getting the rejection from his father, or if you will, sort of the, hey, your life doesn't really matter in this situation. I choose something else other than you. You're not that important. Is has destroyed him inside.
Right.
And by sending this robot back in time, he created that moment for himself.
You're right.
Yeah, he created that moment for himself.
Yeah, because
Created his own trauma.
yeah, you're right. The moral crisis wouldn't be there unless the Terminator was there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's that would be my only problem with Kenta as a character, which is well written because I'm like, oh, that guy, because I'm like, yeah, and if there's a season two, which I'm hoping that there is a season two, that they really get into his character. We know his motivation now. His father doesn't love him and doesn't care anything about him, and now he is interacting with all of these other people because of the way they leave the show. They don't know anything about his involvement with the Terminator coming back in time to kill his father.
Right.
So, and that is going to be interesting to play out.
Yeah, he's almost like cursed with this future knowledge.
Yes, yes. And also the rejection of his father, permanently, and and something that he created. So this is going to be fun if we get the right writing behind it, the same creative writing, but really dive into it much deeper. Give us a full psychological profile of who Kenta is going to become. It could be fascinating. It could be fun. It would be great to peel back the layers of this character, how this event is going to change him moving forward, and what he's
Right.
willing to do, and where he is exactly at the time of Aiko being sent back in time. Where does he play in this whole thing during the present moment of the future that is to become? So I'm really curious, and I hope that they continue, not with the time travel going back in time, but moving forward, because that's so fascinating.
Yeah,
Now
they
we
did a
have,
great job to seal
I
that
think,
off.
yeah, please seal it off and don't bring us any more time traveling Terminators. Let's deal with this army of Enos that are like,
Oh yeah, we haven't even talked about them.
terrorizing everybody.
So yeah, there's a whole other dimension to Terminator Zero that we haven't even gotten into, which what would you say? Kind of an extension of Kokoro rather than
Yes,
Skynet, and
Karen.
they're not in the beginning too much. I mean,
Yeah.
they're there,
Hmm.
but they really take over a lot of the plot line as the story advances.
Yes. In the beginning, they are docile, cute little helpers. A lot of people are abusing them or not really treating them very well. They're from the company, right? Am I getting this correct? They're from the same company that Kokoro
That's how
is
I
from.
understood it too, because
Yes.
Kokoro ends up taking control of these things, right?
Yes, yes, yes. So that's how she's able to control them. And these creatures, they are very formidable
Yes.
as well. They're the things that they're able to do, and they don't exactly show you every single horrible thing that they do at the end, but it's awful. It is just awful. And they show you like blood splattering, and one guy, they grab him and
Oh yeah, this was
just
the worst
pull him
scene right
apart.
there.
Yeah, they just rip him apart, and a whole bunch of them are able to gang up on the Terminator. And at first I thought, I was like, okay,
Oh,
he's
that
got
scene in
this,
the
he's got this.
hallway?
Yeah, and I was like, he's got this. Oh no, he doesn't. He does not got this. This is bad. They just
Yeah.
rip him apart because there's so many
Yeah.
of them, and they just gang up on him, and it's incredible. What a moment! They literally dismantled the Terminator, and I was like, wow, that's incredible. And one of the scariest moments for me was that they pulled up the head of the Terminator and show it to Kakuro. And so what I think is that she
Right.
is going to get that model and maybe even
Mm.
make her own version of that to
Well,
sort of
keep in mind,
use the
she
technology.
so remember we talked about how Malcolm Lee, the doctor who invented Kokoro, as a
Yes.
rival to Skynet,
Yes.
built her up as having agency, as
Yes.
an AI, that he's
Hmm.
not authoritarian. But she kind of comes to the same conclusion, right? She
Yes.
comes to
Yes.
the conclusion that humans are a danger, and
Yes.
she just handles it in a different way. But it's very interesting that she grapples with the problem of humanity. That humanity is actually a problem, and there is logic to what Skynet is doing. That she kind of agrees, but she's not all in yet, like
Yeah.
Skynet is. She's
Yeah.
like, well, the math checks out.
Yes.
But I'm gonna hit pause for a second and like think about it.
Yes.
So, but one of the things that she does is she activates and takes control of this entire army of these
Yes.
robots. And
Hmm.
refresh my memory, what are these robots called again?
Enos. I
Enos.
believe that's what people have been calling them
That's
as
right.
Enos. Yeah.
The Enos.
And
So this and these robots, they are suddenly everywhere in Japan by the
yes.
end of this series, and so they make almost like a like an army or like a revolution of
Yes.
robots in a way, mixed into this situation where where Skynet is trying to nuke the world. So it is another it's something new coming in yet
Yes.
again from this series.
Yes. And basically Kokoro has all of the information that she needs to do any kind of battle with
Right.
Skynet based on what Malcolm Lee has been able to tell her. And it's kind of interesting because she says that she's not going to kill, or she doesn't find humans to be the threat, but she is going to use them as a tool. And I was like, interesting. The computers and machines were supposed to be the tools for humans. And so
Right.
that was another shift. I was like, wow, now what is she gonna do with humans? I really am looking forward to see what if there's more to that, if there's more of a plan going on as far as the future of this particular series. What are their ideas and what they plan on doing going along the line of this story? It's great. I'm loving the excitement and the intrigue that this is building for me. I haven't
Well,
felt like this in years. I'm so
y-
glad that this is here.
yeah, I couldn't agree more, Retro. It's been a while. I haven't really cared too much about the Terminator franchise. I mean, I've
Yeah.
cared enough based on the strength of Terminator 1 and 2 to
Yes.
to watch most of what they've put out. I still have so much love for those first two films that,
Mm.
the Terminator franchise will always have those. Just like Star
Yes.
Wars. You can't take away those originals.
Yes.
So this one gave me that thrill again that the
Yes.
Terminator used to give me. And I also didn't feel like this was just like stupid fan service. I felt like there was some fan service built in a way that was but Japanese, like Japanese anima set in Tokyo. Like I said, get out of jail free card. We got some new takes. But then
Yes.
but that's not where they stopped. They didn't
Yeah.
say, hey, Terminator, but Japanese. Like that,
Yeah.
they got beyond that. They were
Yeah.
like, rival the Skynet, different take on time travel, the Eno robots. Like they actually laid out a bunch of other stuff. So it forced me as a long term 1984 established 1984 to now Terminator fan to
Yes.
sit there and be like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't understand what this character is up to yet. Oh my
Yeah.
god, now I understand. So I was off balance.
Yeah.
I did
Oh,
not
yeah.
I it was not predictable, right? You couldn't
Yes.
predict how this was going to go. You
Yeah.
had a whole new slate of characters. So it gave me exactly what I wanted, which was originality, freshness, and new characters that was on brand and unique and interesting to the franchise. Like it felt
Yes.
like the Terminator edition. If
I
you're hoping
really
for
do.
season 2, my gut tells me they're going to get it.
Oh, I really hope so, because this story needs to be continued. It's really good. I really like the writing is just excellent, and love the execution. Love the fact that it's anime, because there's so much you can do with anime that you can't live action. Would just be so much money and so much time. I wouldn't mind if the entire franchise just ended up being animated from now on. I would not mind it, because, like I said, there's just some things you can do animated you can't, live action just costs so much money. He's really showing us what the Terminators can do. I think Defoe Terminator showed us a little bit, and he really did show us, like, oh, these guys are dangerous. But I
Yeah.
thought that there were a couple of scenes for sure that these guys, that I was like, okay, he could easily kill these guys, and then they come back with it and tell us the storyline. And I think
Right.
that is where a rewatch is so important, because then we can look and see, yeah, he's not trying to kill him. He's just trying to hurt him, or trying to distract him, or trying, like, these. It looks like he's pursuing them with every ounce of his, but he's not. He's not giving it 100%, because he needs to keep these guys alive.
Right.
He just wants to use them to stop what Malcolm Lee is doing, to get Malcolm Lee to open the doors so he can kill Malcolm Lee. And so that is very clever of the writers to come up with that little. It's so little, but it's also like thinking about the end, the end of the story, thinking about the beginning of the story, and melding it together and make sure that all of the parts and pieces are working well. This is the stuff that fans love. We love to be able to watch this again and see, yeah, he wasn't trying to kill them. It looks
I
it
didn't
looks
catch
very
that. So that's actually pretty amazing. You're totally right. I see what you're saying. That's an incredible level of insight.
Yeah, he could easily have killed them. I mean, with his skill and, the little weapon that he created, like, boom, 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 dead. He didn't do it. He needs them. And not only does he need them, he may have even gotten instructions not to kill them from
Especially if we understand who sent him.
yeah, from Kinta.
Kenta.
And so Kinta's like, oh, don't kill me in the past.
Right. I'll send you back, but you don't kill me.
Yeah, it was so funny, because I was like, when he did not kill Kinta at the door, I was like, oh, what's up with this? First of all, he didn't kill him when he captured him
with
the
those
first
3
time.
shots?
Yeah. I was like, what's going on with him and Kenta? It was just one of those moments where it was like, when you see it again, it'll be obvious. And when you look at it again for the second time, it'll be very obvious that he's not trying to kill them, but he is trying to get them. He's trying to grab them and take them, but he is not trying to kill them. And so
Right.
It's beautiful when you look at it again, the writing just being very clever enough to put that in there, and you can see it on screen. Like, it's just so, I love that.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm like,
that is super awesome.
yeah, and that's why I can't wait to see what else is in store from these guys in particular. And just so I can give you guys a hint of who is involved with this. The anime series was developed by Mattson Tomlin,
Right.
and it's also directed by Masashi Kudo. And yeah, that is really great. It was produced by Netflix, by Animations Production IG, and Skydance Television under the direction.
Again.
Yeah.
They are a company on the up and up.
They are, and we just keep an eye out for those guys. They're just really creating some really cool content, and telling really great stories. I'm down.
Yeah. The fact that Terminator Zero is what it is.
Mhm.
and that Skydance was behind it, or at least in part, also bodes well. It means that they do have the right people making the right calls over there.
I'm like so excited for a season 2. I need a
Yeah.
season 2 like right now.
I think it's gonna happen.
I hope so. I hope so because this was good. This was good. And again, I'm really, really excited about the possibility of James Cameron's movie.
I too saw that James Cameron said, "I'm ready to do the next Terminator film." And when I
Yeah.
saw that, I was like, "Oh my God, people,
Yeah.
James,
I
like
was so upset.
you guys need to just stop." And but you pointed out that he made that announcement after this came out, or right around the time that this was coming out.
Around the
So
time.
I wonder if this, even like it did to you and
Yeah.
me, I wonder if James Cameron watched this and was like, huh, and got his juices flowing again. He's like, I have an
I hope
idea
so.
that I can work with this.
Yeah. And cuz like who better anyway? Who better anyway? He was involved with a lot of other productions, but
Right.
they were, I think they all really feel like money grabs to me, and I hate saying that because there are
Right.
some real people who are really creative and wanted to get that story told. It's just that it again, when it feels like a money grab, it means that it doesn't have the psychological weight and impact that the first 2 movies had. There was something
Right.
primal about those, and also just hit you in a different way.
Part of the writer's job is to come up with an angle on it. You can't just, I mean, you have to be able to look at something and say, like, wow, I love that movie. And then to pick out, you have to have the ability to pick out of it what worked.
Yeah.
And I think that's like when you and I talk, or if I'm on a different channel or whatever, part of our job is to figure out what worked. Why
Yeah.
do I like this so much? Why?
Yes. Yes.
What did they do deliberately
Yes.
that made this work? What did they do on accident that made it work? So the writer's job is to put all that together, and then your main gift to the process, your main contribution is
Mhm.
that you come up with an angle that works within this good stuff. This
Yeah.
is what worked. This is what worked. Like
Yes.
even listening to you talk tonight, I was like, it actually sounds like time travel is not the essential part of the Terminator
Mhm.
franchise. We thought it was, but the more we keep trying to include it, the more we're running into problems.
Yes.
So it's making me think that, okay, I could set that aside. What else is working about the Terminator?
Yeah.
Take that, and then as a writer, you bring in something that only Doug Burton would think of, that only retro nerd girl would think of,
Yeah.
and then deliver. You have to deliver on that. You have to come up with something that people are going to be like, oh my God, these guys for Terminator Zero did exactly that. They gave us
Yeah.
something that is unmistakably unique. It's
Yes.
unmistakably unique. It has someone else's fingerprints on it, and I could feel that, and I liked it.
Yeah.
And yet it felt absolutely in the vein of the Terminator franchise.
Absolutely.
And another thing I was going to point out that they did, I made this case after watching Dark Fate. The Terminator franchise is a heroine-centric franchise. And I think that we instinctively knew that, but I don't think that we intellectually faced that. But
Mhm.
Terminator is a heroine-centric, female
Yes.
heroes. That is what the Terminator is all about. This Terminator Zero had that as well.
Mm.
There was a lot of very powerful female characters in this, and they were
Oh, wow,
very,
yeah.
very good. And yet they work. They were great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this
Uh,
did everything I asked it to do.
yeah. I mean, I thought this really had everything that a lot of people are complaining about, or
In
are
other
upset
franchises,
in other franchises, but yet it was able to do this in a way where the focus was the storyline, um, about the events of things that were happening in the story, not the actors. We didn't even know who the actors were, right?
Right.
Like we don't the producer, what the producer is doing with his person, don't know anything about the producer, don't know anything about the director. We're able to just accept the work.
Well,
No,
I mean, it's not a perfect show. It's not perfect.
I don't think so. Yeah,
But it didn't have to be, and nor does any show have to be perfect for me to like it.
yeah,
At the end of the day, did they deliver on something? And the more, and if they can deliver on the goods, I'm
yes,
much more willing to ignore or deal with things that I thought were less than perfect. Like I said, if my biggest complaints were the crossbow
hmm,
device in the forearm, I didn't
yeah,
like that at first, but it grew on me because of the way it was used and how
yeah.
effective it looked. It reminds me of did you ever see the movie No Country for Old Men?
No, I didn't. Oh,
Okay,
did
well,
I? I'm
I'm
not sure.
not ruining the show, but Javier Bardem is in it actually, and he's got this like scuba tank of air,
Mm,
compressed air, and then this like hose, and he can just walk up and put this thing on your head and pull the trigger, and this like it kills you. It's a really weird weapon. And I
wow.
remember watching this and I was like, what the hell? But it grew on me, this bizarre weapon,
Hmm.
because of how he used it.
Yeah.
So this reminds me of that. This
Hmm.
this nail gun crossbow on his wrist. Secondly, I wasn't a big fan of the Enos. I thought they were
The
awfully
design.
the design, right? The
Yeah, yeah.
design.
And
They
that's
look like
why,
Japanese toys.
yes, and that's what they were supposed to look like,
Right.
those
So again, they grew on me
yeah,
though,
yeah,
because you get the sense that they were designed for this like almost like benign purpose, and then
yeah,
here they are storming like walls and stuff at the end. So all of it grew on me because the main core of the story worked,
yeah.
and that's what I care about the most.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, that is so true. And here's where I'm also like, them showing the Terminator's head later, as like I was thinking maybe they were going to somehow do like sort of a hybrid between these Enos and the
Oh
Terminator.
yeah,
Use the Terminator as a design assistant to kind of assist the design of what the perfect soldier would be, and so that's something that
oh yeah,
Kukoro would be able to do, and so that's a huge get, right, for Kukoro and her
yeah.
plan, if you will, against the machines, and also to maybe even learn from one of Skynet's minions. Like, what is their plan? What did they do? And learn about the history of the future from this thing. So there's a lot, packed into that story. I just love it so much. I
Yeah.
just do.
Yeah, that's
I just do.
great. I think this is great, and I'm glad you wanted to talk about it because there's so many things that people complain about today, and for good reason. There's a lot of bad stuff out there, but
Yes.
um, here's one that had no fanfare coming in.
Yeah.
I didn't see
Yeah.
any advertising
I'm
on
so
it.
glad. Yeah.
Like I said, I just saw it as a panel on my Netflix screen. I was like, "What?" And then I heard people talking about it, and really, you're the one who got me to like commit to watching it. I'm like, "Wow!" So this is like legitimate Terminator action and storylines and everything with something new. So
Yes.
it can still be done. And
Yes.
my belief, like you'll hear people say, like, "Oh, that franchise is tapped out," or "You
Yes.
can't tell another good Terminator story." Wrong. That will always be wrong. A good writer can find an angle on it. Yeah, maybe
That's
there's a good time to put something to bed,
yes.
but I still think a good writer can come up with something.
Yes,
Something.
this is wonderful. I mean,
Yeah.
as a Terminator fan, Terminator being my favorite movie, I was never a proponent of like, let's have a million Terminator movies. But like literally
Right.
you could do anything now and it would work because it's not gonna mess with your favorite movie. It's just not.
Right.
It's a, not its own thing, and it was beautifully set up. Like you said, writers, job of a writer is to make the story work.
Right.
Okay, and that's it. And these guys figured out a way to make it work, and they even outdid themselves by making it work for all of the stories that we've been complaining about, all these years. People have been really upset at how things have been going with the Terminator franchise. This is cleaning that up.
It cleans it
And
up. And they even got away with some of the fan service, in my opinion, like
I think so.
recreating scenes from from earlier, better films as like,
Mhm.
careful with that, man. You're like,
Yes.
and they pulled that off, in my opinion. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, this this is like the same but different.
Yeah.
And again, I think they were able to get away with it because it's long form storytelling. I had 8
Mm.
episodes, so
Yes.
the fact
Yes.
that it showed up in like episode 4, no problem. I've got 8 episodes. I've got enough of the story where obviously the story wasn't dependent on this one, scene.
Yes.
So it made it easy for me to digest all that when it did happen. It came
Yeah.
through nice and easy.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah. It couldn't be more. They really did something incredible here that really opens up the world, and it opens up the imagination too. I mean, part of this, I don't know about you, but when I watch a really good movie, I think about it later on. I think
Oh
about
yeah,
it like
you can't help
days
it.
later, and just like, oh wow, you imagine yourself in the situation, and you also like can imagine other stories. And there have been so many fans who've been having, come up with their own kind of Terminator stories, and their stories will be valid.
Yeah.
Because of this wonderful take that they've created in the franchise, using, I would say, high level psychological concepts. This is high level thinking. I think this
Well,
is not
it's
just like your average thing.
it's oddly anti-multiverse
Hmm.
in a weird way because it's really adjacent to the multiverse, but it does it in a way that kind of makes it irrelevant. So
Yes.
it's perfect for me, you know. And two, I do think that there was some philosophical ruminating going on in this. There was some real thing. Malcolm Lee, as a character, was very brooding, very deep in thought, had a
Yes,
lot of questions. There was a lot of like moral, fallacies, and
I
so
love
this
that.
goes to that psychological level. It
Hmm.
played on the primal level. It played on the science fiction level. Like we
Yes.
said, it was anti-multiverse, so it solved that. So it just did a lot more right, a
Yes.
lot more right,
Yes.
than the things that may be subject to criticism. Which even like I pointed out, even the things that I could criticize, either a grew on me and didn't bother me,
Hmm.
or was just small enough that it got swallowed up in an 8 episode thing that it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
It just wasn't a big deal to me.
Yeah. I really adored the questions that Kukuro asked, and
Yeah,
uh, just the compelling situation. A man in a room with a computer talking to it, and not just typing in commands, but
right.
actually having that conversation and having the think through.
I will say this, and this was not a criticism for me,
Hmm.
but I could see how possibly it might not land with everybody. This was very much Japanese anima. Like
Hmm.
there
Yeah.
are animated scenes where like the characters are like, their eyes are glistening and
Yes. Yes.
shaking, and
Yeah. Yeah. It's
like I mean, it looks like Pokemon.
yeah. Yeah.
It's pure Japanese anima, and the characters are animated that way. Some of the drama and the dialogue come across that way, but that's what Japanese anima is. It's its own genre. It's its own style of artwork, and personally, I appreciated a
I loved
new
it.
look for the
Yeah.
Terminator
Yeah.
franchise, and anima, scratch that itch for me.
Yeah. It was, like I said before, like they were able to do things I've never seen in live action, because it just would be hard to do, hard to pull off, a lot of money. You'd have to scrap it, or it just isn't the right amount of technology that they can come up with that scene in live action. You
You
can
know
do it
what?
easily in animation.
You know what this show did that really none of the other movies did?
Ooh.
Um, so because in live action, you're dealing with models and human beings and everything.
Yes, yes, yes.
The Terminator exoskeleton always seemed a little like chrome and a little light, almost like
Mm,
aluminum.
yeah,
There's even scenes, even in the Jim Cameron's Terminator 2, when he has like the future wars, those things, although they looked big, they looked like flimsy in a weird way. Like the
yes,
hunter
yes.
killer machines, like the way they the metal always looked very light, almost like
Yeah.
aluminum foilish in a weird
Mm.
way.
Yeah,
This show, because it's animated, you don't have to
yes,
worry about the constraints of how much I weigh or how much a model machine has to work. You get the sense of heaviness, that
yes,
these were very heavy machines, and that when they're shooting at them and these bullets are hitting it, you just sense the weight and power of a single Terminator machine in a way that the movies sort of did. I mean, the movies did it.
yeah, yeah,
The first two, the,
yeah,
the the first two movies delivered on it,
yeah,
but this just made these machines seem so heavy and
yeah,
so powerful that like when another scene in episode 3 occurred and suddenly this thing enters the room with them and they're shooting at it, you're like, oh man, honey, that ain't gonna do anything to this thing. And
yeah.
just the
They
way,
really feel
yeah,
indestructible, and that's why I'm looking at at the scenes and I'm like, oh, he could have easily killed all of them right then and
yeah,
there, and it's just so they're so much more powerful in this format. Uh,
yes. And when they fall, the sound effect, pling, like they just sounded very like heavy and like you said, indestructible.
yes,
So and that was a weird observation that I had, but I was like, huh, I guess you can't quite do that in a live action to the same degree because you just can't build something that heavy and
yes,
put it on screen perhaps. But in animated, you could do whatever you want, and they
yeah.
did.
And that and there's no limit because these guys, they do this for a living. They're probably coming up with ideas. They probably had some ideas that they had to scrap for time, uh but that's all they do is work on animation. So there are probably scenes, I hope, coming up that where they can test those limits and make some more iconic moments for us as lovers of the franchise and the series, because this is just fantastic.
My hope is that good word of mouth like this gets out and more people watch the show.
It's very important, and if you are a fan of the show, do try to catch it a few more times if you have the time, and then come back and we'll have some really juicy conversations, because this is not the end of talking about this.
Right, right.
Terminator Zero. No, we're just getting started.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, 100% correct.
That should have been the subtitle for it. We're just getting started.
Getting started. Judgment Day pregame.
All right.